Manpower Group released its fourth quarter global employment outlook survey today, and it finds softer quarter-over-quarter forecasts in 21 of 39 countries, indicating growing hiring uncertainty, but still stronger confidence than a year ago in a majority of locations. Jeff Joerres is the chairman and CEO of the Manpower Group, and he joins us now from the firm's Milwaukee headquarters live. Jeff, good to have you here on Fast Forward. We've been talking so much about the employment picture here in the U.S., and clearly there are issues, though, overseas. So why don't you give us a summary of what your outlook found?
Yeah, when we look at the outlook, it is kind of a mixed bag, but I can say with a fair amount of confidence that we've been doing this for a long time in the U.S. for some 50 years. And I was expecting, actually, given the backdrop of the noise in so many other parts, that it was actually going to be worse than what it was. What we're seeing here is that you're seeing some companies pull back on the increasing their staff, a little pull back on the decreasing of staff, but there's nothing draconian happening. This is a more of a hesitation and a pause. And I can say that actually for across the world, with some exceptions of countries that are still doing well, Germany, China, India, some of those. But for the most part, yes, it's down. We would have expected that, but it's not down as dramatically as I would have anticipated.
Jeff, in the context of everything that's happening, particularly in Europe right now, we're seeing a number of countries have to press through some very severe austerity measures, and they seem to go through one after the other, and then they still have problems, but that certainly can't help the employment outlook. And I noticed the weakest hiring plans, of course, are in three of the countries, at least, that we've been talking about recently: Greece, Italy, and Spain. Is that going to accelerate? I mean, Spain's unemployment rate is shockingly high to me, right? It's over 20% at the moment.
Right, right. And that's of the registered unemployment. I think you would find kind of the informal marketplace, which was a big part of the Spanish market, it becomes even higher than that. So there's a couple things. Clearly, you've got Spain, Italy, and Greece having some difficulties in there. They are working through the austerity programs. It is not affecting the labor markets. While it's soft and should be, it's not turning it into a complete disaster. And in fact, quarter over quarter, third quarter over fourth quarter, Greece number went up actually 4 points. So there is some life in there, and there's also a disconnect between these very heady, important macro issues of sovereign debt and what's happening on the street, which is businesses still being conducted. It allows and injects this immense sense of uncertainty, so people pull back. And one of the first things they pull back on is inventory. The second thing they pull back on is hiring people.
And then swinging to the other side of going to the other side of the spectrum right now, the strongest hiring, of course, happening in a number of countries that are doing quite well, not necessarily their stock markets, but countries that seem to be growing at a decent clip: Brazil, Taiwan, India, and Singapore. To what extent, if things fall apart sort of in the developed nations, which is a lot of the focus these days of conversation, will you continue to see strong hiring in these countries?
I think, in fact, I would know, because we've seen it just happen in 2009 and 2010, is if things get really bad, and really, if you look at this survey compared to then, which was negative in most of those countries, there's no comparison between the two where we are right now. But if it continued to go down and slide, those countries would be affected. They are affected by Western consumers who are buying their product or services, but they will not be as affected because they have a growing economy themselves. That's what China was able to use during 2009 and some parts of 2008, was their growing middle class kind of muted the downside that was happening from the export business. But it clearly does have an effect.
Yeah, many of these countries, clearly Singapore has really made an effort to have their own internal economies, not highly dependent on exports. We have to leave it there, Jeff, but do appreciate you joining us. That was Jeff Joerres, chairman and CEO of Manpower Group.